All right, let's get sat down and get our mics on.
My mic is always on.
That'll probably make
our
it
mics.
sound.
Our mics.
All right, let's talk about Kickstarter.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about Kickstarter.
We talk a lot about Kickstarter. I think for this one, let's talk about what it actually takes to run a Kickstarter from prototyping all the way to fulfillment.
That's interesting.
Because we talk a lot about like the perils of Kickstarter, but let's talk about like what we do to overcome those things.
That's cool.
And I think we have a unique kind of perspective on it because a lot of Kickstarter companies order work from China or a publisher and then they create that. We're actually manufacturers.
Yeah, that's different. It changes things quite a bit.
It does. We don't just put in a big order.
Yeah.
We have to actually make everything.
It's an interesting idea about scaling. It's a curious thing.
That we design for production now, as opposed to we used to design for like usability, like we still do that.
Right.
But production has come from like the last thing we think about to the first or
prototyping
second
stage.
thing that we think about when it goes through. And I like, pushing it through the shop, we have to think about, and it comes in like materials and costs and pricing. So I need to know, on average, for someone out there, how long does it take to
To sand that.
Yeah. So we need to have good data on every part of the thing. It's not just, we don't just pull a number out of the air.
Right.
We have like a bunch of complex spreadsheets for each species of wood and variability in pricing and lead times, and it's all like meticulously calculated.
It is, right.
It's very formulaic.
And we have to do that.
Absolutely.
We have to do that kind of grunt work to figure out correct pricing, because incorrect pricing will sink you.
We've
We've
been
known
there.
that. We've known that. We've done that.
We almost went under.
So after that, we send a lot of orders through the shop. So like on the mini painting system, we had samples of every wood, so we can take pics of them, so they can be on the Kickstarter campaign page, so people can see what they're getting. Yeah, it's interesting, and that's a lot of work in and of itself. Setting up the Kickstarter page, doing all the video work, all the photography, proofread the page. We double check all the prices and shipping, and make sure everything correlates in the pledge tiers, on the shipping estimates, all that stuff. And we have a team, a good office team, that proofs everything, double checks everything to make sure that we don't make any mistakes on the Kickstarter. Because once those pledge tiers are set on a Kickstarter, if anybody backs at a pledge tier, you cannot modify that pledge tier at all.
Right.
So you can't change anything about it, and that's locked in. So after the Kickstarter ends is kind of where the real work actually does begin.
When we were like a smaller in the garage, the Kickstarter was the thing. It was kind of like, come up with the idea, do it. We got in so much trouble earlier on.
Right.
Not like sussing out the whole process.
Seeing the whole process.
Yeah, it's fascinating now, because the view now is kind of like, instead of just this one thing that's like a sales tool, now it's a fulfillment.
It's a project.
Yeah, look at the whole thing in its entirety.
Right.
And make sure that when we get to the end, things go well.
Fulfillment's actually the most important part of a Kickstarter.
Oddly enough, actually making the stuff that you promise. Yeah.
Yep. And right when it closes, this is kind of an undervalued piece of the whole process is the pledge manager.
Yep.
Because that is vital. We love it when it's ready 2 weeks after it closes, because that's when the Kickstarter funds release, and that's when people start choosing exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And the earlier we get that information, the better. So we can get the actual data of the stuff that we need to build into our system as quickly as possible, and then throw it into production and make sure that everything works.
Frankly, I don't want like a runaway Kickstarter success, because if you make a mistake somewhere in there, if you misprice one wood species and 30% of the people get that and the pricing's wrong, that's 30% loss on the whole project. So you have to be very particular about that, because we did component collectors, it exploded. Yeah. And we messed the pricing up on that so bad.
Right. I feel so much less nervous about our new model. Like 5 waves, limited. We know we're going to be done with this in April, May next year, and then we'll be clear. We can bring it to retail.
Yes.
You know, that's ideally what a company wants to do, is go on Kickstarter, see the viability of that product, see what the market demand is, and then put it on our retail site and sell it that way, because retail's best.
It is.
It's the most stable, simple way of sales, basically.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of one of the harder avenues to build.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it really
takes years.
It takes years to build a really solid, like our business is predominantly retail.
Yeah.
You know, we'll do a Kickstarter. It's not because we need like the money.
Right.
We're just, will this idea work?
Right.
Can we scale it? Let's produce 500 or whatever. And then we go, oh, cool, this is really good. And we can take it to retail.
Right.
And we can kind of assess the demand or the viability of the type of product.
And generally we reserve it for kind of new, more original ideas, because we don't know how it's going to be received.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're still small enough that we need the marketing reach of Kickstarter to get new people.
Yeah, that's
and
fantastic.
It's very effective at that. So I'm on a ton of Facebook groups, and I see a lot of kind of the sentiment like, why do big companies use Kickstarter still? Why don't they just do it on retail?
Yeah.
And I understand that sentiment, and I get it. They use it as a marketing platform purely.
Yeah.
But we, as a small company with 20 employees,
there's 20 people in the building.
There's 20 people in the building.
And
we're a small company.
Yep.
But we need to utilize it for a lot of different factors to increase our reach, to check engagement, to check product viability, and we use it for those purposes, and it is very helpful for us.
And you know, we talked about like risk mitigation and kind of like knowing every single human in this building. I feel beholden to them to like protect their interests, protect our people, make sure that we don't goof this up and have to like lay people off or do something stupid or like
make bad decisions.
You know. And so I think that idea of like accountability, like making smart, informed decisions, being accountable, and especially because we can't afford the luxury of just like throwing something out there. You know, it has to be very, very measured, very considered.
Yeah, it's good. And we're much better at it now, which is great.
So much better.
This is our 24th Kickstarter? And I think I can understand how people would be like, why are you going back to Kickstarter? You've done 23 already. Isn't your company kickstarted and going?
Yeah.
And it is. And it is on the shoulders of Kickstarter that we did get started.
Absolutely.
But it's still a very nice revenue stream for us. And very controlled now, which is really great.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's good. And I honestly, I just enjoy it. I like getting new people into our fold and them joining us on Discord, and then they talk to me directly, and they'd never heard of us before.
And that's how we got where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of did kickstart the business to a spot where we've got 20 staff now, and we've got like regular retail, and we have like a very good predictive model, and it's such an interesting like ecosystem. And
that's why we're doing the model that we're doing on Kickstarter, and why we will continue to do so.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. So I think that pretty much wraps up kind of how we view Kickstarters and why we do the model that we do. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments. I'll answer any questions. You can email me at conus@dogmight.com if you want to talk about Kickstarters and like, you know, how best to plan for them or prepare for them.
You can't have my email address. I don't do that.
It's Mike@dogmight.com.
Fuck. But yeah, this is a really good sample of a successful project for us, and it's going great. And thank you again to all the backers.
Yeah.
I think we're all set. Peace.
Cool.
All right.
No check. Good.